Sure.
Go.
Okay. This is August 8th, 2001, and this is Elizabeth Townsend. We're interviewing for Dean Massaro's Preparing for Lives in the Law Project, and this is Lowell Rothschild. All right, so the first question, why did you go to law school, and was it what you expected when you got there?
Well, I had come to the university in 1946. I thought I had some things in my life that were a little strange, and I thought I was going to go to rabbinical school. And I took a liberal arts course. And then a whole series of my friends who had come back from service. And you could get admitted to the University of Arizona Law School without taking an exam to get in, and you could have a C average, or 3. And my friends were doing it, and so I came from a family who had no money, basically, so I wasn't going to go into a family's business, nor was anybody going to help me do that. And so my GI Bill was running out, so the next step was to go to law school. For me, it was going to a trade school, essentially, but it turned out not really to be a trade school. And was it what I thought it was going to be? Yeah, it was stimulating, interesting. I had suggested to you earlier, I think that's not the way to do it. I think you're better prepared by being grounded in a good English course, a good humanities course, maybe even the sciences. I had friends who were really in architect school who'd come over, and they became good lawyers. So, but it worked out for me. I went from 2 years of undergraduate work, about 60 credits, to getting my law degree in 1952. So in March 28th, I will be admitted to practice for 50 years.
That's very impressive.
Well,
That's pretty good.
I like it. It's been good for me. It's been good for my family. I've got a son who's a partner, who's a lawyer. My daughter was a litigation legal assistant for 14 years, and is married to a lawyer. So it was sort of something that came in the family. And my mother had 7 sisters, and I was probably the second of the grandchildren that went to college, so it was a big event, and education was important to us, and so law school was a big deal, and still is, in my judgment. It worked. I liked it, and school was fun. Then when I got out, in Tucson we only had maybe 2 or 3 multiple firms. And the one was called Boyle Bilby, shown here, and the other was called Darnell Robertson. And I don't know if this is going to be good for your video. You may want to edit it out. But there was no way I could get a job. Number one, I wasn't an honor student, and 2, they didn't hire Jews. So you had to do it yourself. And so I hung out a shingle. I got an office. Well, actually, I didn't quite get an office. I opened an office, and I'd been active at the University of Arizona in the fraternity council, and I'd worked for the graduate manager's office. So I had a connection in the alumni office, and I went to work as a attorney to the Arizona House of Representatives.
Interesting.
And I did that a couple of times, and commuted when the sessions weren't quite as long as they are now. And when I wasn't doing that, I would open an office.
And what kind of law did you
Well,
practice?
yeah, I went to the courthouse and got appointed to defend criminals. And one person who I'm sure everybody knows, but 2 men, Tom Chandler and Charlie McCarty, who's now dead. They worked for Ivo DiConcini, and they had an insurance practice, and they sent me a company I did subrogations for. And so I had this little office. I wasn't married, and I got married a couple of years after I started practicing. And I'd lived in the community since 1942, and so people came, and I did divorces, and I did little personal injury cases, and the first year of my marriage, which was in '54, my wife worked at Hughes, and I think she made about $5,400, and I made $4,800 in gross. So it was not as alluring as everybody thinks. And then a number of years later, in 1957, a fellow by the name of Norval Jasper organized a law firm. It was sort of eclectic. It was John Mesh, who's now retired, and the named partner in our firm, Alfredo Marcus, who was the senior federal judge, and Norval and myself, and we started a law firm. And since then, it's evolved through a bunch of different things that we now have 15 lawyers, own our own property, and we're very oriented to non-lawyer people in the firm. We have like 14 paralegals, so we do a lot of the nature of the practice now is basically civil litigation, bankruptcy. I really am a bankruptcy reorganization lawyer, and 4 of us do that in the firm. It's kind of a polygon firm. We have a black partner, which is unusual in this community to even have black practicing. Richard Davis, a very distinguished trial lawyer, and we had 2 brothers, and we had the father and son, so it was a little different, and we've been fortunate. The firm started in 1957. So we're almost 45 years old, and so we've had good stability and made good livings, we thought. Very, very structured, interesting enough. A lot of systems. I was obsessive in law practice management, and so I got involved. And it was easy for the Mesh and Marcus were litigators. They did a lot of insurance defense work, and they do their work, they go have a drink or 2 or 3 or 4, and they never worried about the money because I made the budgets, and they were happy to just get what we thought were fat checks. Mm-hmm. And then it just developed, and we've done a bunch of through the years, like all law firms, you do a lot of interesting cases. And we now developed even as small as we were, but a lot of people do it now. We had an administrator, I'd say 20 years ago, who would handle the personnel, and so we were a modern small law firm in terms of, and that allowed us, that's one of the things I think I'd like to convey, that allowed us a lot of, the one thing constant about the practice of law is change, and it goes very fast, and we were able to, at our size, adapt. So you're going to have a vision. Like, for instance, we practice no workman's comp, we practice no criminal law, we practice no divorce law, basically no complicated tax law. We do estates and probate. And we slowly but surely evolved a vision as to what we wanted to be when we grew up.
And how did you do that?
Well, we had retreats, and we had surveys, internal surveys. We talked it through and had outside facilitators often, even as small as the group was. Men that I had, and women that I had met through my contacts with the National Law Practice Manager people. They would come out and give us a vision of it. So we knew we had to have a vision, and we sort of developed, and it's moving all the time. We have them yearly, and it's interesting. We were in a rented space, then we had bought a building, and in our first really planning retreat, there were 8 of us then, and you could tell my son was the newest, and he wanted to grow. He didn't want to be the small son, the last guy on the team. But we gave it to somebody who we knew was pretty conservative, Doug Clark. And he designed, we bought a building, and then we designed an expansion that pretty much limited us to 15 lawyers, and we're now kind of getting close to that. That's a small law firm. I mean, today, you know, the multi-size law firms and multi-state law firms, and we have a number of them. And that's another thing that changed in Tucson. Well, they were all homegrown, and then Phoenix decided that they would reach out, and so the first really reaching down was the Phoenix Snow and Lumber came in, and depending on who told you the story, they either acquired or saved Bill Bichonnier. And then Strike Lang opened an office, and Fenimore Gray, Custer. So we have, today, there are 5 or 6 or 7 branches of Phoenix law firms here. Our law firm doesn't feel pressed by that competition. What you're pressed by is there's a lot of competition. And that's what the lawyers need to learn now. I mean, you have to hone your skills, and I'll talk about it. But it's very competitive. And so it's not easy. You just don't walk out and people run to use your services. Our philosophy has been we ask the lawyers to kind of narrow it to a specialty. Become a good trial lawyer, become a good business lawyer. One of my partners does a lot of surety work and construction work. Other things come, but he doesn't try to do them. Mm-hmm. And so when our associates come in, we don't rotate them like a big law firm does, but they get assigned to somebody. And we have one lawyer that basically does all of our appeals. He's very good at it, likes it, has been successful. I've sort of now really don't do anything beyond business reorganization. I don't do any consumer banking except for legal aid. You know, I will take those on. But I feel that's part of my responsibility, and you do them pro bono. But we'll take the younger lawyers and try to direct them into an area that they're interested and comfortable in. So I guess besides it being very competitive, I think you need to, you're just not going to be a generalist intern. A lot of solo player practitioners are, you know, they do everything. They'll do a divorce, they'll do a probate, they'll do a personal injury case, they'll defend a criminal case. I think it's become much too complex to do. For instance, now I have to agree, in 50 years you've seen a lot, but they're about to amend the bankruptcy law. I mean, totally change it. And of course, everybody who's practiced is just up in arms, because you have to learn it all over again. This is the 5th time they've changed it since I've been practicing. And you learn it and you do it. You know, if that's what you're interested in. So that would be my second thing, is that they're going into a very competitive area, and they need to pay attention to a focus of some sort.
Competitive with other firms or within a firm, or
just the practice
just everything?
of law. Well, within a firm, I don't. I've never had the big firm experience, and when I say big firm, you know, that's really 100 and above. A middle-sized firm is, you're talking about 50 to 100, and we have very few in Arizona. It's unusual. Snell and Wilmer has 240 lawyers in about 5 states. And then you drop down to probably Corals and Brady now, which is a Wisconsin firm that took over. They merged with Strike Lang. So they have, it's hard to know what their facility is, but they have a Phoenix and Tucson office. But we have maybe 4 or 5 100-person firms. I give you an illustration. Lewis and Roca has a Tucson office, which has grown. They have a Phoenix office, which is in excess of 100, but it's pretty stable and busy. They've now just opened a Las Vegas office. So there is all kinds of movement and vision, because clients move. And people, Corals and Brady was interested in Arizona because M&I Bank came to Phoenix, and they kind of moved with a lot of their clients. So the competition is, I didn't talk about the competition within a firm.
Right.
I'm not equipped to, I would say that it depends on the compensation system, how people compete. And there are many different compensation systems.
What kind of? I mean, we hear lots about billable hours.
Yes.
Can you talk about that, but also other forms that sort of drive
Yeah,
everything?
the billable hours is a issue for lawyers that have existed for a long time, and really, if you think about it, lawyers' focus should be on clients and really what they want. We do 6 or 7 different kinds of fee arrangements in our office. We do contingency fees, we do flat fees, we do combination of retainer contingency. The bankruptcy lawyers are allowed only to do it on an hourly basis, and they're approved by the court. So we're pretty much, it's a multiplication, you know. The Johnson case tells you that it's a system that the courts have developed. Although you can get an enhanced fee rarely in bankruptcy, which you can. And so really, what you should concern yourself is how your client does it. I never have a new client leave without their understanding what the billing arrangement is. And I've been shocked. People come in and I'll say, I want X amount of dollars. And they'll say thank you after telling the story, which is interesting because you're then conflicted out of their problem. You can't take it, and in a bankruptcy area, a creditor may call you, you can't take the case then. And I've developed some antidotes for that. I'll tell you off camera.
Okay.
And but they'll shop you. So the clients are a lot more sophisticated than lawyers think. And you know, between the press and the television and all of that. So you've got to be, in my judgment, very straight up with them. You have to know what you're comfortable with in terms of billing. We represent a number of insurance companies and malpractice defense and surety companies, and it's multiplication times hours. And I'll tell you something, how the skip on how modern it's gotten. And there are other lawyers that represent Hartford Insurance Company, but we've represented Hartford Insurance Company now 40 years. In the last 2 years, we electronically bill them, which is terrific because we used to bill them, it'd take 6 months. They wouldn't let you bill them for 6 months, and then it'd take another 60 days before they pay you. Now at the end of every month, you electronically bill them, and they pay somebody, and you pay. It's a 0.5% to audit your bill. And occasionally there's some little mistakes. Of course, our people learned how to do it fine. So we now electronically bill, and they direct deposit it into our account. And we really like that because it really turns the money very quickly. So you don't. That's nothing that you're going to have a big discussion about in law school.
Right.
But the reality of it is that all corporate clients are very aware of it, and in the times we are in now, they're going to start to look at as good as the times are, they're going to start looking at their lawyers' fees. And there are some situations where you are hired by a level of people that probably don't concern themselves as much as they should about fees. But I think you can, we've learned to devise something that the client can live with in terms of, but the billable hour is.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if somebody comes in and says, I want to do a foreclosure, and I want you to give me a price on this foreclosure, I don't want to pay you on an hourly basis.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll take a look at it, and we cost it out. We know what it's essentially going to cost us, unless you get into it. And so we'll into a fight over it.
Mm-hmm.
And what we'll do is we'll enter into an agreement with them. This is the price, unless these things happen.
Mm-hmm.
So they know what their cost is going to be.
Do you think that's a better way to go?
It depends on the fact situation. I think that the personal injury contingent fee is the best method, notwithstanding what all the hoorah you hear about it. It gives people a key to the courthouse that they wouldn't get. And then often, you get in situations where you want to settle a case, you go to your client, or I see this with my partners, and the client doesn't have the work effort at stake. So they say, no, take the risk. And sometimes, but it's their case, it's not the lawyer's case. He or she should understand that their responsibility is to a client, not to themselves.
All right. So you had mentioned before that there's a lot of systems and structures within law, within the practice of law and the business side of law. So maybe we can talk more about
Yeah,
that.
that becomes difficult, I find, for our associates. I've talked to the dean about this. And of course she has some interesting answers that she's given me in response, all of which are pretty reasonable. I think students do not have a sense of when they come out what they're going to be facing. They're going to have to buy computers, they're going to have to buy a desk, they're going to have to buy a secretary, they're going to have to create a budget to open their practice. Or, for getting this, they get a job, but for government. If they get a job in the private sector, let's say they start at $55,000 a year. Well, the $55,000 to carry them isn't enough. They have probably another 20% of benefits between health insurance and disability or whatever they give. So that costs the law firm another $10,000, $12,000. So now it's $57,000, $67,000. And they have to have a secretary, they share a secretary, they have equipment, they have to have a rental space and all that. So for the sake of argument, let's say that a first-year student costs a law firm $80,000, $90,000. I think that's probably conservative. And we charge them out at $125 an hour. So if they do 1,600 hours a year, $125, what is that? That maybe they grow, and they don't do 1,600 billable hours when they start. If they have a good 1,200 billable hours, hard billable hours that they collect, because in the beginning. So we don't think that our associates start making money for us or showing a profit until they're there 2 or 3 years. A lot of it's still training. So you have to, the rule of thumb is that they probably have to gross maybe 2 to 3 times what they cost you. If they cost you, maybe not quite 90, let's use the number 8. They cost you $240,000. Think about the hours they have to bill to get to $240,000. So that's the problem. Now, there's never that open discussion in law school. So they get there, and there's a lot of pressure on them to bill hours. And you can come in to live a life of any kind. If you come in at 8:30 in the morning and you work till 6:30, well, you take lunch, you go to the bathroom, you talk to somebody. If you get 7 hours in that day of billable time, that's a lot. Times 5 is 35. Times 50 is maybe 1,500, maybe. That's no vacation. There's none of that. And then, and I think women have an even more difficult problem than the men. The women have to be a wife, which has certain responsibilities. And if they have children, they by and large have to be a mother. Although I see a bunch of sharing by the young husbands that I never did. I thought she went to the office, she worked. She did, that was her job.
And what do you think about that?
If that's what they're into, that's fine. I think it's great. But I think that the pressure of practicing law and the heat on that is something that one needs to take in consideration. We, on some occasions, have told associates they have to go on vacation.
Really?
Oh yeah, because they're just not doing. They're getting tired.
Mm-hmm.
But they're pushing, they want to make partner, they want to gross a bunch of money, they hope they'll get a bonus. And but I don't think it's any different than the rest of society. You know, just that we say it because we live in it. But it's there. It's there, and so the billable hours is a method of measuring it.
Can you talk more about, you mentioned the term hard billable hours. Can you talk more about, like, you do your timesheet, and what happens to it then? Sort of the behind the scenes, like if someone...
I in our office, except for a couple of dinosaurs like myself, most people do it on the computer their time, directly on the computer. I still do printed time slips, and somebody puts it in for me when they can read my writing. But all of that is, in our office, there is no such, the culture is there's no such thing as not having your time in on the 30th and 31st of the month. Everybody has to have their time in, because we bill all of our bills between the 1st and the 10th. Now, we don't have a penalty, nobody gets fined, but comes the 7th or 8th of the month, and we have a chart in the account. It's easy, with 14 lawyers. The legal assistants put their own time in, and their time goes on the particular case. And they get drafts between, we turn it around just like that. If a person has all their time in, they can have their drafts on the 2nd of the month. They can bring them in the next day. But the people that are always late, that we always ask, which are the same people that have been that way for 20 years. You have to go in and say to them, X, you haven't got your time here in. You haven't got your time in. And the staff doesn't do it, really. Mm-hmm. Some managing partner. In our case, I'm sure other people do it differently. I know of, for big law firms, that they would not give you your pay. They wouldn't give you a check until your time was in. And then that's monitored. You get all your drafts and you send them back. You may not send them all back. You may have a favorite client, or they may have a problem on it. I mean, there are a lot of variables, really. I mean, you're asking for a lot of the dirty secrets.
That's right.
All right.
So what happens? Okay, so what happens next? I mean,
in that process?
Yeah.
Once that process is done and the lawyer signs off, and he may, more often than not, it may have been transcribed or done improperly, so better practice is I go through my bills pretty much line by line and see the spellings are correct, because I don't actually do them in the way they write. But most of them put it in themselves. Sometimes you'll have transcription of numbers and somebody else's time will get in. And when that's all done, out the door they go. The bookkeeping department sends them to the mail room and they're gone. And they're out.
And how hard is it to collect the money from the clients?
I would say that depends on, every fact situation is different. If you have not collected, now there's different things. Contingencies, you wait. There's some things you make an arrangement with somebody. I wrote a letter today to a client that hadn't paid since April, and the bill was due every month. And I got the bill, I sat down and said, I noticed the last payment you made was in April. And very friendly. In our office, if it gets if there's some that the lawyer's turned over and they don't have a relationship any longer, they have the administrator make the calls. It's very, it's like not paying your bill at Macy's. I mean, and one doesn't like to say that, but that's it. But we have a pretty high recovery, but we have write-offs, and we look at them. In our office, you can't write off more than $1,000 without a managing partner signing it off. And that's a very quick process. But we have write-offs and
for someone who doesn't know, what is a write-off? I mean, is it just
I bill, and I have a bill. I bill, and I've done this work, and people have paid, and they may make payments, and then after 90 days, or after 6 months, or after a letter, they're not paying. I will tell you, we have never sued anybody in the 50 years the law firm has been in existence. And there are two good reasons. the best reason is that's when you're going to encourage a malpractice lawsuit. Because the defense to the fee is you did it wrong, right or wrong. And we just, as a matter of practice, have never sued over our fees. Now, that's not a public, it's now public with the video, but a very important part of practicing law is screening the clients you take. One, they can afford to have legal services. You can do, I can do all the pro bono work I want to do, but I want to choose. I don't want the client deciding. I want to decide what's going to be for free. And so we happen to have an intake meeting, sort of like LA Law, I'll admit to you. We meet on Thursday mornings, 7:45 in the morning till 9. We talk the cases. Everybody reports their cases of the week. If they've got a problem, they have a question of, I want to take this case. Partners pretty much are allowed to take cases without a sign-off. Associates are not allowed to. So usually during the week if a client comes in. But everybody knows what's in the office. It's kind of an interesting, or something will come up and nothing shows on a conflict check, and somebody will say, you can't take that case, you're going to have to send it out, because we're in this situation. And it's fellowship, we talk, in our firm, we have everything from an Irish Republic, an Army devotee, to a Rush Limbaugh, from left to right, so it's stimulating, and they're with each other, because they're always busy doing their own thing, and they have really no exchange, so it's fun. I wouldn't miss one of the meetings. I miss them these days. I'm traveling, but and so we discuss the cases, and sometimes cases are rejected, but sometimes you get one of our named partners, Doug Clark, who's a magnificent trial lawyer. He'll start, and you always know what's coming. He'll start. Well, there's this little old lady who got pushed around, and it's got to be a lousy case, but somebody he's sympathetic with. And we say, oh yes, tell us about it. And that's the difficult thing, and that's the thing lawyers can learn in that setting, is that you have to learn to screen the cases so that one, and if you're by yourself practicing, you almost have nobody to talk to. Classmates. I practiced as a solo for 5 years, and I had friends that when I had a serious case, I went to an older lawyer and said, help me.
So in the screening process, how do you know? How do you know if clients are going, is it
Well,
a feeling you get, or do you?
Well, we talk it through.
Uh-huh.
They'll say, here's my thing. Somebody will say, well, what's the proximate cause of this?
Mm-hmm.
You got lousy damages. Why are you screwing around with this thing? You got some lady that's got, or a man that's got $500 worth of specials, and you're going to file this lawsuit over. Send it to X. He's just starting out. You don't need to fool with it. Or then they say, but this is a very good client's new son-in-law. So there's all kinds of variables. Nothing is. Just listening, when I tell you, laws change. And so we do that. But we do have that dialogue. I know nothing about other firms. What they do. Well, I do a little bit. In many firms, a certain person has to sign off. It's a big firm. They may have a committee. And you just, if you call and say, I'm going to want to refer you a case, one, they do a conflict check. And two, I think they have to get somebody else's authority to take a case.
How important is it to bring in clients for the lawyers in your firm? Is that an important
Very
part?
important. That is a critical, major issue in our particular law firm. We have a marketing committee, and we spend 3% of our gross on marketing. Now, marketing is defined by, could be charitable contributions. We used to get a lot of demands. We don't do it that way any longer. At Christmas, well, we call it Hanukkah Christmas, we ask the whole group, which includes the staff, to recommend a charity. and we give a charity gift to 3 to 5. We don't give Christmas gifts. We used to buy ties, and we used to do all of the, and we give charity gifts, and we send to our clients a Christmas season greeting card saying, "In your name has been given this amount of money." Well, it does two things. It gives the charity. It's really a marketing thing, and people like it. You know, they don't care whether they get a tie or another butterball or whatever you send them. So, but the hard thing for young attorneys, and if I have to give a message to a class that's learning what the practical law is that this is a people business. And so you have to network, and you have to give of yourself, and you have to give to the community. People have to know that you're real, and they also have to know you're a lawyer. So if a woman goes to work at Casas Niños on the board of directors, and she's a capable person, she makes a contribution, somebody in that 30 people is going to admire her skill. And she gets across them where she's an attorney, and or she's an ex-office, and they get to like you. I am now doing a trust, which I've done for 15 years, for a man that I met on the board of the temple. And out of clear blue sky, he showed up many years ago and said, "You know, I think you're tough enough and bright enough to protect my wife and children. I want you to be the trustee." And I've run this thing for years. I think you've got to have a certain kind of knack, but whether you have a knack or not, you have to think about it and do it. Because unless you go to work for government where they really don't care, or you're going to wind up in a back room depending on somebody else's referring matters to you. And I'm going to tell you about that. In 1952, I was admitted in March of 1952. There were 19 of us in the class that got admitted. There were 600 that took the test the other day here, and there are that many. And that was a summer one. So it's, you know, of course the state is huge and growing and desirable, but a lawyer's got to differentiate between themselves. And the only way anybody knows you're any different is you've got to have a relationship with them. I'm very into lawyers marketing.
Okay, so let me ask you some more questions then. Okay, so I'm a new lawyer, and I heard what you say, and I'm not really sure what I should do. I mean, when you first start out, do you have to do more things?
I think you ought to do a lot of things. One, I think you should give of yourself to the community. Either your church, everybody needs volunteers at the church, your social group, some kind of social group, you belong to some kind of ethnic club. You go to the United Way, there are 150 organizations that'd love to have a volunteer. I was active early in the American Cancer University, and then more importantly, that the lawyers miss, the Bar Association, the young lawyers, because let's say you get to be a specialist, say you're a personal injury lawyer, unless you advertise, who's going to send you business? But your classmates will send you business, the guys and women you work with in the young lawyers. So I think I thought it was interesting to be active in the bar, active in the community, and how else do people know that in fact you're a lawyer? And even if you're in a firm now, in our firm we keep our associates very busy, but I will tell you that those that we sense are going out and bringing in business appear to be more important to us than those who sit on their tush and do nothing.
Okay, so I want to get active in my community, but I'm not exactly sure what that means. I mean, if I want to get involved with my church or with the United Way or some of the other examples you gave, what does that mean exactly?
Well, you call up the United Way office and say, "I'd like to serve on a committee." They got 20 different committees. Well, what do you want to do? They're volunteer. Actually, there's a volunteer center in Tucson, Arizona, that can tell you all about every single organization. But I can't believe that by the time somebody gets to law school is interested, there isn't some part of their life apart from going to school that they're interested in. And they need to do that, and they need to do it for other people. They need to contribute the fact that they're well educated and have the privilege of getting to go to law school. They're going to have to give up some of their time for this community, the city, the state, or whatever, and ask. And if you're in a firm, you go to the partners and say, I would like you to place me. I've placed young lawyers on committees. I placed one of our partners. I decided that the place to meet a lot of young businessmen, now this may shock you at a video, was in the Tucson Conquistadors, who run the turn, give all those things, and I had a golf playing partner with a lot of personality. And so I called a friend of mine that, of course, I've lived here a long time, who was there, and I said, I would like X. It's terrific, and he's gone right through, he's become responsible, and has a lot of exposure. And I see some of those businessmen now in the office.
Okay, so you get on a committee,
Yeah.
and then what happens?
You contribute your time, and people will recognize that you're a sound, contributory person, and the subject of the world will come up, and somebody will say, oh, I've got my daughter's having trouble with her husband, and I think she's going to have a divorce. I'm sure women must talk about that usually in women's group. And you say, well, I'll give you my card. I don't do that, but if you call me, I'm sure I can find you a good lawyer.
Okay, and so then what do you do? And so then they'll think, they call
So
you.
a couple, they call you, and you know, Miss Jones or Mr. Smith, who you trust and who you think are capable, and who might be your contemporary who's doing that. And you say, here's the referral. So when that person learns, that person has a personal injury case because you're a good personal injury lawyer, they say, I'm going to send this. Now remember, I'd like a little referral fee, but at any rate, my point being is that's, you got a network. People have to know that you think about them. The community has to know that you're willing to give them yourself. And it isn't easy. If you've got a husband that you got to go home and cook meals for, and a 6-year-old you got to pick up for nursery school, and you got to practice law, it's a little hard to have time to join the junior league, which is another good example. I mean, people turn their nose up at it, but they do a lot of charitable things, and there are middle class or above 200 women. If I was a woman lawyer, I would make a beeline for the junior league so fast it would make your head swim.
So
I can give you a bunch of examples, but I don't think it's important.
No, this is helpful. So, okay, so I'm a young
Now,
lawyer.
I'm giving you the underside of
That's good.
of that life that's
That's good. That's what we want.
Go
That's
ahead.
really what we want. All right. So, any other things that I should be doing as a young lawyer in terms of the business side of things?
Yeah, you should think of your law firm, and let's say it's 5 to 10 or 15, as a political unit. You don't have to be political in the bad sense, but you have to understand that when a partner gives you an assignment, he thinks it should be done in an hour, and it might take a week. And if there's something you don't understand about it, you've got to go and say, I don't know how to do this, but I want to do it, and you're going to get lots of work. And if you're capable, you even get more work than you can handle. And you've got to know that when particular lawyers, I don't say in favor of, but you've got to respond to, if you're going to grow in that law firm, you've got to respond to the partners. They expect it.
Okay, so I'm given an assignment and they think it's going to take an hour, but I
I think I'm only exaggerating.
I know, but
they all
then,
think it's if they thought it could take an hour, they'd do it themselves.
Right. So that's okay. So they know.
No,
it's
you
not
ask.
time.
You ask. I mean, this is a long course.
That's okay.
You say, when do you need it back?
Right.
And I'll try. And if you don't, if someone may say I have a deadline, and they may say, take your time. I need it in a week. Be punctual. Comes that week, and you say, Mr. Smith gave in, Mrs. Jones gave me an assignment. Whatever you promise, and you do the same with clients. When a client calls you and they say, when can I get this deed? Oh, well, I'll have it 2 days from now. You don't have it 6 days from now. You don't make promises you can't keep.
Okay, what if there's, for whatever reason,
An emergency.
no, what if there's someone who doesn't like you, or like if one of the partners or somebody who just, for some reason, you've done something, like how do you keep everyone happy, and there's so many
It's
different
impossible.
personalities?
How do you keep everybody happy
I
in
mean,
life? It's impossible. But by and large, at least in a small firm our size, we sort of assign kind of a mentor. So you go to the mentor and say, X has given me an assignment. I'm doing something wrong. It didn't like me. I'm sure that it happens. I know it happens. And not everything works. But be punctual, be honest, be responsive. I think one is a successful attorney if you're responsive. There are, I would say, most of the lawyers in our office are responsive. I have a partner who is brilliant, and he's very good on his stuff. When I take him work, he somehow gets lost in the ocean, so I don't take him work anymore. Because I don't like him, and I don't like the work he does, and he's very successful, and he'll take it from me. You know, not many of them turn me down, but I expect to get it back in a reasonable time. So that's what I would say to the class.
What about, can you talk a little bit more about when being the managing shareholder? That sort of what do you do in that position, and what should young lawyers understand about that, or students who don't even know what that means?
Well, everybody has a different form of governance. Some are run by committee. Some are run by a person who's designated to be the managing shareholder. And like, I can only speak for our fact situation. We have an administrator who handles personnel to the point she needs to talk to the shareholder. We have a management committee as small as we are. We have 5 people, so the managing committee's agenda is set by the shareholder. He watches the budget. He's got 20 or 30 different obligations. He's really the chief operating officer. I call him managing shareholder. It could be managing partner, but he's a chief operating officer.
And what kind of things do you do? I mean,
well, he signs checks. He reviews the checks. The accounting department presents them to him unless he's not around. He works with the administrator. She may have a physical problem with the building. It's outside of budget, and he brings it to her, and he'll decide whether it's discretionary or he has to take it to a management committee. He probably visions, is the beginning of the visioning of where the firm wants to go. We lost a partner by death this last year, and we wanted to replace him. And it turns out my son is now a managing partner. There have been 2 others since I was there, but he is now. And he had a vision of what sort of person he wanted to replace the lawyer we lost, and did some recruiting, subtle recruiting, and then he has to get us ready, because most of what we do is by consensus. You know, we don't have any really 6-5 votes, or our operation is that by and large, if somebody's really unhappy about it, it's not that big an issue that we do it that way. He recommends compensation systems. We in December we changed our compensation, system a little bit, which we hadn't done in maybe 15 years. So he has a lot of responsibilities. He's the leader. The problems first go to him, and then he either resolves them if he can, or then takes them to the management committee. We rarely have had issues that we've had to take to the partnership in total. He'll recommend like a new lateral lawyer coming in, who is not a young associate, but that goes to the partnerships. I mean, he'll say here's the reasoning and all that, but he usually has ready by the time we vote, most of the managing shareholder. He would help supervise us the technology expenses. I mean, that's all in the budget. So he has a lot of responsibility.
So when you're a managing shareholder or managing partner, how much time do you have to practice law, and how much
Well,
time do you?
you have to be you have to have a certain personality. We've had 4. I managed to do it for a long time because to me it was like a second hobby, and I was involved in it nationally, and it was my I put things to work there. So I spent a lot of time in it. The second managing partner we had was interested in technology. He spent almost no time on anything but that, and after 2 years he decided that he wasn't a very popular managing shareholder. The next managing shareholder was for 5 years, and he did it based on he was going to be an interim until Jonathan came along, and he was very laissez-faire about it. He wasn't too interested. He had an administrator who handled all the personnel things.
So how are
So
you?
it's different personalities.
So how are you different from your son? Are you guys similar or different in your style of managing?
Well, I call him very penurious. I think he's a little tighter in money than I was, which is also interesting. He's, I think, I think he's very capable. I've liked the way he's managed it. He's all, when I did it was pretty much a kind of a top-down thing. He is a little more inclusive in terms of, for instance, all our writings, our statements, and our financials are shared with all the associates, which I find interesting. His theory being that they always understand how much it costs to run a law office. I always thought those were secret things that was none of their business. But it hasn't changed much in terms of his doing that. He's had different techniques. I think he does a good job. I find him more intense than I thought I was, but I'm told it isn't true.
Really?
Yeah.
So what is it that you liked about it that you did? I mean, you've devoted a lot of time to thinking about these things. What is it?
I liked running a major business. This was a multi-million-dollar business, and I got to do that besides practice law. And I liked the success. We were lucky. The elements worked, and I was able to try leading 14 lawyers, and then 40 other personnel. In our society, half of our secretaries were single mothers. They were going through divorces, and they're all women. We had very few men, so they were having tumors taken out or having babies, and I had to learn about maternity leaves. The secretary I thought, a very exciting experience. I enjoyed it. I really liked it. But it was time to move on. Somebody else I wasn't going to be able to do it forever, and I was there much too long. A couple of these facilitators I told you about that we brought in were close friends of mine, and they started working on me 5 years before I left to move aside, but it wasn't fair to the group that I continued to stay. As a matter of fact, one of them came in and had mocked up and then because we were on this roll and successful, nobody really wanted you to leave. Mocked up a New York Times article that I had been appointed to reorganize Beijing or something like that. And now what were they going to do? Because I wasn't going to be there. And then we did it that way. I just said, okay. And then you raised, I thought, an interesting point. It's not easy to practice full time and do that also. But most successful lawyers, I think, have pretty strong egos, so they think they can do both of them. And the ones those that followed me, I think each had a place and did it. It's not easy, but it's a challenge, and these lawyers like challenges, so they do. We don't pay anybody. There's no some lawyers, because they lose their practice. A couple of law firms in Arizona are so big, with 100 lawyers and 4 or 5 vice president of staff people, human resources. They really don't have time to practice law. Where we've been able to do it.
Okay, well, I want to ask you a couple more questions about this. I'm putting my sweater on. Hold on. Cold. So let's say I'm a student and I hear you say this and I think, I want to do that. I want to be in that position. I want to be able to, I like what you're saying about managing and creating and all of that. How do I, is there a career path, or how do you get to be?
As a lawyer and a managing shareholder, I've never thought about that as a career path. There are lawyer administrators in the College of Law Practice Management. We have a number of fellows who were practicing lawyers who became administrators at a law firm. And they're big jobs now. You run Milbank Tweed or Sidley and Austin. One of our fellows who actually is my program chairman is Sidley and Austin. He probably earns $700, $800, $100 million a year. Because the partners do. And he gets, they've got, Sidley and Austin is probably a $500 million business. So it could be a big thing. Our business is our 14 lawyers is a multi-million-dollar business. So it's not like running a corner grocery store. I've never thought in terms of the University of Denver. You can get a master's of law practice management there. It's a very small program. Most of the people they send into government to run courthouses and to run clerk's offices and all that. I think, I don't know that I would go to law school to become a managing partner. You're probably a lot better off going to accounting school.
And what about this? We hear lots about partners. Why should you want to be a partner, and how hard is it to be a partner? I mean,
well, you should want to be a partner because it gives you it gives you a partial say in the running of the law firm. More often than not, you earn more money if that's your goal. And so, if you're going to run for the ring, you might as well run for the gold ring. A lot of people may not want that. One of the things that happens when you're a partner is you also assume the liabilities. And some firms have to be financed. They have to go borrow the money for computers, or they get them on lease, and often there's individual liability. So I don't think in the context of this video I can answer all of those kind of questions. But we give associates a book written, Making Partner, done by the American Bar Law Practice Management Sector. And I think it'd be a very good idea if I get you one, and you may want to order it to help her with the course. Because it really tells associates some of the things I've been over. And we so they just ordered something. We have some new associates. And that's a good resource. And we'll answer it a little more explicitly. A friend of mine, well, it's now being written by a guy named Lawrence Green. But, and if you call me, I'll send you one.
Great. That's great.
And there are books on the billable hour, and our retainer is in that, our retainer form, and there are books on, I'll send you, if I can get a hold of it, you can get it online from ABA, the catalog, which would be just kind of perfect. And there's a woman at Salem Woman. Her name is Heidi something. She's an Indian lawyer, Indian law lawyer, and she wrote a book for us on balancing your life with practicing law.
Great.
You ought to look at that sort of catalog.
That would be
Even
great.
if you don't look at it, you need to get it to give.
Right.
It's a good supplement for that kind
Right.
of book.
That's great. Okay, we're going to move to, we've spent a lot of time. Is there anything else you want to talk about with business and law, or can we move, because I want to talk more about what you think about the future of law before we run out of time.
Go ahead.
Well, what do you think? Where should we be going? I mean, you had talked about that you had written an article about the future of the practice of law.
Yeah. Well, let me give you a quote. You really can't predict the future, only understand its implications of the current conditions that you're in. My favorite quote, which I wrote, that I will tell you about because I love it, is, what does the future hold? My view is expressed by my famous philosopher, Charlie Brown, who declared in the Peanuts cartoon, I have strong opinions, but they don't last long. The future of the practice of law. One, I think we're going to see a much more diverse population of lawyers that will more mirror the diversity of our communities. And that presents problems for law firms as to how you properly manage this diversity. Start with women, who I believe are really an underclass when it comes to practicing law. They're very difficult. A woman, let's see, she gets out of law school by the time she's 24, 25, 26 years old. She's got 4 years, and then she gets 7 years from 18 to whatever she is, 27. And she has only a certain amount of physiological time to have a child. Or they, although I don't know if it's something like that, but usually. So she now wants to go practice law. And she is, whoever she is, or whatever her hormones are, whatever we do to each other, she wants to have a, more often than not always, but let's say a majority. It may be changing. Want to have a husband, and they want to have children. Well, those responsibilities that we put on women, there's the first minority, are almost inconsistent with billing 2,000 hours. And some law firms have tried to solve that by sharing. And, you know, they'll say to two women, okay, you can each work half time. That's great, but you're not around to make the impression. So I don't think that that's been successful. And you can edit this out, I'm sure you're going to. We came and talked to the dean about we have never been very successful in holding women in our law firm. And we probably have a bad reputation. But we're sensitive to it. I'm sensitive to it, and I think everybody is sensitive, because there are a lot of reasons. Women are forming more businesses than men, so if you want to have clients, you have to be sensitive to them. There's a certain loyalty that they have. So now how do you work in that minority? In our office for years, we had a Hispanic partner. Tucson is a community that's 38 to 40% Hispanic by the census. We have no Hispanic partners in our office anymore. It just would be more convenient. They're a class of people. So that's, I think that we, by the way, have tried to recruit a couple, and they've gone other places, but in time it'll work. Blacks are an unusual issue, but throughout the country and throughout Arizona, that's going to be an issue that has to be dealt with and should be dealt with. That's one thing I see in the future. The dynamics of a law firm, technologically. I have a home in Coronado, and I was there last week, and I have a laptop. And I have a dialogue with my secretary. So I'm not even prohibited, you know, I've got a phone and a fax. And so I practice, I look at documents, I practice and do all those things. So I think, one, we have found none of our summer clerks all have come to the university, and none of our new associates. They've always come with being tremendously technologically advanced. And that's important. I cannot conceive of a law student not understanding, knowing everything there is to know about it. But it's going to change, it will change the practice of law. It will change it in a very basic way that I think lawyers, you're going to basically start having virtual law firms. You can come, and we do it in some part, but you ought to be able to go to a law firm where that lawyer you hire is really a manager. Should be able to come to Lowell Rothschild. He'd say, there's the litigator, there's the engineer, there's the doctor, and I will just buy these services. Now, you know, we have a lot of ethical provision about sharing fees and all that. Well, the multi-practice issues are now upon us. I sat in the House of Delegates until a year or two ago and sat when they sent it back, but it's foolish. Europe does it. The largest law firm in the world is Arthur Andersen. As accountants, they have 1,000 lawyers or more. The clients want something different than the lawyers want. So my concept of the future is that the clients are going to force us into what is good for the clients. I went to a committee meeting of something completely unrelated to law. 6 of us flew into Milwaukee for this committee meeting, and then the project manager said, when will we have the next committee? And I got named chairman of this committee. They said, when will we have this next committee meeting? I said, we ain't having a next committee meeting in Milwaukee. You're all from a city that has a Kinko's. We're going to go there and we're going to do a video conference. Why should we all travel days? So today, you can go to our United States Bankruptcy Court and Judge Myler's courtroom, and Judge Hollowell, she does the same thing. I do hearings in a Phoenix case on a television screen in Tucson, Arizona. And there's something in Phoenix on television. I know about the future of the practice of law. Who can afford? Why should a client have to have me spend a day of travel, 4 hours of travel, for a 10-minute hearing? And I mean, our technology, so the nature of the practice of law is going to be entirely different. But more important, I think the structure of law firms will change in part. Now, in the major financial cities, the Los Angeles, the New York, Cleveland, the Dallas, Detroit, Chicago, it probably won't change a lot in terms of the big firms because, I mean, it'll change technologically, but you'll have the big firms. But a little tiny law firm like us, we don't have any trouble competing against those law firms. We have the same technology. In our firm, we happen to have a technology specialist, not a lawyer. We have a technologist who, if I don't know how to do something with my laptop, I went to Israel 2 weeks ago, and he set me up, and I read the daily deposits. I read all my emails. Right, I could have been in the next room. So it can be done. It's going to be done. Plus, I think there's going to be a lot of nature, and that may very well help deal with the conundrum we have with women practicing.
That makes sense.
So that's something I visualize that will change in the future. A lot of things have changed. Most insurance companies now do a lot of their work in-house. We have 2 or 3 law firms in this community that are really owned by farmers or owned by State Farm. They're not called that. It's the law firm of X, but they're all employees of farmers. So that's changed. Most companies are bringing their work in-house. I think what you're going to see is only really kind of crisis things happen. And then more importantly, people don't, our public, the public doesn't want to litigate anymore. It's a waste of time and money. So you're going to see a lot of arbitration, a lot of mediation. And I think that the legislatures are going to just legislate away a lot of things that lawyers do. They're just going to say, you're going to have to go administrative. You know, they do it with workman's comp. They could do it with personal injury matters. Except we have a constitutional provision here that says you're entitled to a jury for some things. But the Congress has just passed in the healthcare, in the HMO thing, a limitation on damages. So there's nothing to keep the legislature from totally changing the way we practice law. And these are the things I think the students have to get ready to. The vision of what they saw 10 years ago, or what I saw 50 years ago with carbon paper, isn't going to happen by the time they get out of law school. It's all going to be different. So what they've got to accept is change, dramatic, serious change, and accept it and go with it, and be flexible and deal with it. They will be better off for it psychologically, and it's going to happen. When I was chairman of the law practice management section, we were trying to do certain things. I used to say, look, the train is coming down the track. It's really had to do with multiple practice. You can stay on the tracks and get run over, or you can step aside, or you can get on the train. My advice is you get on the train, and that's really that's kind of as I see the future. The future is very complicated and changes very fast.
With the multidisciplinary practice, what do you say to people who say that lawyers have a specific ethics and specific rules and those other professions don't?
Well, I think it's a problem, but I think it's got to be monitored and it's got to be dealt with. I'll give you an illustration. We have created a new business in Michigan. And this technologist we have is really overstaffing. You asked how Jonathan was different than I was. And he just thought we were paying too much money to have a technologist for 40 people. And so we have created another business, and we now have gotten him business in law firms, other law firms, networking, teaching networking and doing all those things. So that the way we bring our costs down, and we went to all the lawyers and the associates and said, you want in, you can be a partner. You can join the corporation. Now that's kind of a little different multi-practice because we're using somebody else. But major law firms in Washington, D.C. have environmental consulting firms. They have, I think our next stop will be probably human resources, teaching human resources, because we have 3 or 4 lawyers that do employment work, and they only do it in a crisis situation. Mm-hmm. They could just sell manuals and teach and create. They're doing the same thing. Right. So, and probably we'd have somebody else, a layman, running that, who in that corporation, the technologist that we have is an equal partner we are, but he's in a separate corporation. And I am very unsympathetic with the ethics question. And I can see the problem, but I think it can be monitored. The accountants have it worse because they audit and they have that problem. I think we can overcome it.
All right, let's. 8 steps to help you succeed.
Okay. I'll tell you what they are.
Okay.
One, develop a vision for your law firm and yourself, if you're an individual practitioner. Centralize the management in the law firm. You probably need a managing partner instead of it's just too complicated. Develop practice groups. We do that. We have the bankruptcy lawyers meet, we have the probate lawyers meet, we have the litigators meet. What's the other one? Improve client service, keep them involved. Let your client know what you're doing all the time. Plan a case. I guess I'm not on video.
Yeah, you are. She's still on.
Plan the case, do a case plan. And the client comes in and say, here's where we're going to be. You ought to have predictable fees. Client ought to know what's going to happen. Always keep the client informed. When the client talks, really listen. Make sure the client believes you care. We talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then make a good presentation. Make a good work product. With graphics today and technology can make it look good. Expand the role of non-lawyers. Now, we've done that for years. Your legal assistant. Much of the work a bankruptcy lawyer does. We have 1,000 forms. They're up on a computer. All of those can be created by a non-lawyer. I review them. But I'll say to my legal assistant, I need a motion to lift stay. I don't dictate a motion to lift stay. And she knows the case well enough. So it lowers the cost to the client. And it really enhances your profit because you've got somebody who's never going to be a partner, the legal assistant. And you shift the firm growth to non-lawyers.
Interesting.
Focus on value to the client in the sense that if I'm doing something for them, what is the cost in relation to what they're getting out of it? Evaluate the practice areas. You want to be flexible enough that you're in emerging practice areas. I'm talking about a firm, but even an individual. Develop a practice area, know about and be flexible enough that if I'm always doing a subject that really is going to be administratively ended, that I can do something else. The best example, I think, is the insurance defense lawyers. Most of their practice has been narrowed, notwithstanding all the things you see. Those are big crisis things. They're rare compared to the red card, blue card thing. So it is very difficult when a lawyer's practice for a number of years to switch him or her to doing something else. So part of my advice is that you sort of kind of look at the areas, but always know that you might want to need to change. Now, you got to be really facile to do that. And then make your technology productive and profitable. You can spend a lot of money on all the changes, and you really don't need complicated technology. You can continue to buy all the gimmicks, but you really, for instance, on my laptop, I saw it was Windows 98 in the office on my PC. I'm at 2000. I've just never changed them. I don't need to. I just use it for email. I don't do a lot of creating. I use it for reading materials and sometimes research. But I'm not really creating a lot. Somebody else, either I'm a legal assistant or an associate do it. So those are about the 8 different things that can help. And those were written by a man by the name of Arthur Green, who succeeded me a couple removed as chairman of the Law Practice Management. He was a lawyer from New Hampshire. He was a managing partner of a 100-person law firm. And he's now a law firm management consultant. And that's kind of where I'm at in terms of the future. I think it'll be very different, but it's still going to have the same basic thing, people serving people. Unfortunately, in our society, there's always going to be a need for lawyers. I don't think it's just the delivery of the services is going to be in different form. a more modern form, quicker, more responsive. I think in the years when I began, we sat behind the desk and sort of people came to us and we told them what was good for them. The most important thing I've learned, and I'm still learning, is to teach yourself to listen. And it's very, you can imagine people come in with me in the reorganization problem. I've heard it 100 times. But it's their problem. They want to tell you the problem. So I've had to learn to listen, and maybe there's a new nuance. And so you really have to train yourself to, and that's what if somebody said to me, what advice would you give us?
Mm-hmm.
I'd say, learn the skill of listening to somebody else. You will be a much better lawyer for it.
How do you learn that skill?
Patience, discipline, learning that you can learn from your clients. Most of my education about business, my ability to reorganize a business or help somebody, have been from clients. I did not read a book to get it. It's experience. So that's what I mean in terms of active listening, I guess you call it.
Well, this is great. We have a couple more questions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we've asked this of almost everybody. What have been some of your happiest moments in your life as a law? When you think about what's a happy moment in the law for you? And if you could give an example of that.
If I don't want to turn it off, but I have one that I will tell you afterwards.
Okay.
I thought one of my achievements, professional achievement, was the reorganization of the city of South Tucson. That there had never been a city reorganized. Now, that was sort of a lot easier than Orange County or some of the others that had, but it was the only one that was the first one that came to actual completion, and that had the unique because of the particular part of the bankruptcy law. But that was a square mile city that was 100% Hispanic, and Judge Bilby, the day we walked in there, was going to make sure it was successful. He jumped on that side very quickly, so I had a lot of help with the judge on my side. But that gave me a lot of success, and that was where there had been a raid and by the South Tucson police, and a city policeman was in a cooperation deal, and they shot a man paraplegic out of him. His name was Garcia, and so he'd gotten a big verdict that the city couldn't pay, and then filed the 9. But I guess the most satisfying thing is we had a victory party when we bonded out the ability to pay the judgment, and he came to the victory party. He was getting all the money, and he was sophisticated enough not to be angry.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was an important memory for me. I got an email yesterday. We sent out a newsletter. So there's you would have called Caveat. If you give me your address, I'll send it to you. And it goes to about 3,000 people. It's a marketing device. And I got an email yesterday from a man. I did a chapter proceeding of 7 apartment buildings, one of which is Skyline Gateway at Swan and Skyline. And he wrote me and said, I still get your newsletter and all that. And he said, I always think about you because we would not have had a business. We now manage 10,000 apartments, but for your skill. And that really, I sent it to the administrator and said, here's the reason I still do this. And she said, why don't you send it around to all the lawyers? It's very self-serving. But I did, because she asked me, and I said, if you'd like to know why I'm still here, here's the reason. So that was, getting a result for people. It's been, for me, financially very good for my family. We've had a lot of, been able to educate our children well, and we have a lot of security, so it's, I think I've taken just as much as out of it that it's given me. I've been lucky. I've had a good career, and because of that, because of it, I've met people from all over the world, and I have friends in England, and France, and Germany, and all over Israel, and the Far East, all of whom I met who are lawyers, practicing lawyers, and that's the commonality I have with them, or I've had a case against them, where I've done that. So it's been a nice trip for me. I'm not sure that it is for everybody. A lot of people, I find that, and I don't put down a new generation. I just don't think that's fair, because I'm sure my generation was wacky as hell. But I hear a lot of unhappiness with young lawyers. I don't know what they expected. They don't get to try, they want to be trial lawyers. Well, we have a lot of litigation in our office, and our two lead lawyers, maybe Richard Davis, who's one of the finest lawyers in the city, he may try 3 cases a year. Doug Clark has tried 2 or 3 in the last year. They just never get to the whole romance about it isn't what they think it is. And but could be satisfying. You don't have to get a jury verdict or somebody acquitted of murder to do all of that. And then another thing that's kind of changed my vision of it is that we have such a dominant thing over crime. We have so much crime that the courts are very occupied, really, really, with a lot of crime. So the civil side of it doesn't get treated quite as, and that changes the dynamics of how cases are settled and done because of time. And the legislature, it's very much controlled by the, if you realize that we just work within the laws, and Congress is always in an upheaval. They just passed this famous tax bill with now the estate tax is going to be going up, but it isn't. I don't think it'll survive another change in Congress. So there are a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm interested in a lot of things, and it's obviously it's kept me stimulated, to answer your question.
That's very good. Do you have anything else before any thoughts or anything else you'd like to say?
Yeah, if I had it all to do over again, I'd be a lawyer.
That's a good way to end. That's great. Thank you so much.